The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. I thought we were closer to the end of the season than we are, but apparently episode 6 is now here.
Always a debate. Every week we have to look it up and see what episode we're on. But this is episode 6.
And we got more questions, so we're continuing on with that portion of this season. It is season 7, episode 6. Q&A with S&T continues, and that is next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
We make podcasting easy. Mindgarden Media can get you going on your very own podcast. With many years in the broadcast and audio industry, Mindgarden Media can edit, fully produce, and provide all the web distribution services. We're podcasters too, so we'll guide you every step of the way to a professional-sounding podcast production. For information, email the mindgardenmedia@gmail.com. The mindgardenmedia@gmail.com. Or check us out on Facebook.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome again to the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we are here with more questions and answers for
They
this
just keep
season.
rolling in, Todd. I love them. I'm having so much fun this season. Seriously, like I am.
I'm glad you are. I was like, okay, what do I say to that exactly?
Well, I am. I'm having a good time with this stuff this season. I love, you know what? It's funny because the questions are not just random, like they're random questions, but they're like thought out questions. They're like things people really would love to hear another opinion on. You know, a lot of people form their own opinions or they just don't know anything about it in general and they don't know what to think. And so they're really well thought out questions. And I love it.
Yeah. And hopefully we're taking some time to think about it on our end and we're giving at least halfway decent answers. I mean, it's kind of tough to know exactly which way to go with that stuff sometimes, but.
Well, I laugh because every week we sort of put in a disclaimer. This is for entertainment purposes only. We don't pretend to know nobody knows the real answers to any of this. It's just sort of based on what our experiences are and what we've thought about things. So.
I wanted to, and this is just off the cuff, but I realized this was something that I wanted to bring up this week. And it's something that you and I talked about earlier this week. We know that one of the shows that we enjoy is a show called Kindred Spirits. And on the show is Amy Bruni and Adam, what's his name?
Barry.
Adam Barry. And a lot of times they have Chip Coffey on, who is a very well-known psychic. And I've always liked Chip. I think he's a little eccentric, which is always kind of fun to watch with him.
Yes.
He's always got the scarves going on and all that kind of stuff. But he's usually very good at tuning in and being able to provide some very much needed information about the investigations. Not only on this show, but he's been on so many of these shows before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And this week, I follow him on Facebook, and this week he had a little message for everybody. In the last couple of seasons since COVID, he travels less to the locations and does a lot of his readings from home. And apparently a lot of people ask, like, well, why aren't, now that COVID's over, or at least, you know, we're beyond maybe the toughest part of COVID, why aren't you going? And I think the thing that he said basically that because of his health, he has diabetes and some upper respiratory issues and things like that. So he has to be very careful with COVID. But also, this is something I didn't know, he's a caregiver for a family member. And so he's the primary caregiver for a cousin who is immobile and can't get around. And I just really, you know, we look at these things, we watch these TV shows, and we forget that these people have lives too, and it's not glamorous. And like he said, if he's gone, they have to find somebody to take care of his cousin. And there's only one person that they trust. And this person has a full-time job and a family and all that. And it's like, okay, well, that's the kind of stuff all of us go through in our lives. And I think we tend to forget that kind of stuff.
It's so relatable. You know, we're not talking movie stars. We're not talking Brad Pitt and, you know, Angelina Jolie. These are people who, when they're not taping the seasons, are doing appearances. They're exhausted like we are. They're dealing with the same illnesses, the same life problems that we are. And so I thought it was really nice to actually hear sort of a behind the scenes of, you know, what his life is like. You know, we just kind of put these people in this realm of almost like they're not real because they're on TV, but they're real and they feel and they go through the same things that we feel and go through. And so I thought it was really interesting and really cool that he shared that with people, because really he didn't have to share that with people. All. And I thought that was really interesting and relatable because, again, I'm diabetic. So I really took it seriously when we were in COVID, much more than I think a lot of people did, you know, because of my health. And I didn't want to get sick. I ended up with COVID twice, both times through no fault of my own. But, you know, these people have real personal lives and fears and daily struggles. And so I just thought that was really cool. And speaking of psychics, one of our other favorites is Michelle Belanger.
If you don't know her, and I'll be honest, you brought her up to me at the very beginning of our kind of friendship, if that's what you want to call this or whatever. And I wasn't quite sure at first. I wasn't quite sure because she can come off she can come off a little cold. Mm-hmm. But then you see her work and she is just unbelievable. I
have followed her for a long, long time. She's been like Chip. She's been on several different shows. She's done Portals to Hell quite a bit. One of your favorites that unfortunately is not coming back. But excuse me, I was watching her for years and she's become sort of a mentor. She doesn't know this, but she's become sort of a mentor to me over the years. I even purchased a couple of her classes that I took, video classes, on being an empath, on being a psychic empath. And she's just one of those upper echelon psychics, empaths, mediums. She's an expert on the occult. She is just amazing. And I look up to her so much. And so really quick, we were originally, if you guys follow along with us, you know that we were originally going to meet up in Chicago in September.
Well, we were actually going to meet up here.
Right.
And then we were going to meet up in Chicago.
Right. And most of this is due to American Airlines and my dog. And so we decided we were going to do Chicago because it would be a little bit easier. And then I just said, I'm having anxiety and a meltdown because I don't trust anybody to watch my dog for 5 days. So long story short, we've decided now that in September, Dave and I are going to leave Central New York. We live just east of Syracuse. And they're going to leave, Todd and Jay are going to leave from Wisconsin. And we're going to meet in the middle in Cleveland, Ohio for vacation this year in September. So the cool thing about it is it's a whole new set of places that neither of us has ever investigated, experienced, done anything really in. And the cool thing, too, is that Michelle Belanger lives about 40 minutes south of Cleveland.
So I need to, this is a message just for Michelle. Michelle, if you get one of these. Hi, Michelle. My name is Sandy. I am a big fan. I've seen you on TV. I really feel that we are connected in so many ways. Please do not be afraid of me. I am not a stalker in any way, shape, or form. Why won't you answer me? I am a message. So if you get that, Michelle, Run like hell.
I've only sent you 12,000 messages, Michelle. Why won't you answer me? No, what I do think I'm going to do, though, is... No, you're the one who said send her a message. You're the one who said send her a message.
Yeah, but
you want to meet her, too.
There's a difference between sending her a message. Dear Michelle, I am a fan, blah, blah, blah. Here's my situation. Whatever. And...
Well, here's what I'm going to do.
We've lived together. We've been involved with 776 lives. You were once my...
No, what I'm going to do is I think Illyria, her partner, it pretty much manages her social media and her press and things like that. So I'm going to message and just, say, we have a podcast, blah, blah, blah. We'd love it if you are going to be doing any workshops or any appearances in the Cleveland area within an hour or so in September. We'd love to know about that because we'd love to come see you and possibly meet you. I'm going to do that, open the door and see if there's any chance that we'll get to meet up with her because I would love to meet her. In all seriousness, I would just love to meet her. She, to me, is the epitome of what the supernatural kind of medium, psychic, empath world stands for. She's just all-knowing, I guess you could say. So I just think of her as a mentor, and I really look up to her a lot. And she's tough as nails, and I love that. She's like tough as nails, Todd. So that's going to be cool. We're kind of planning, looking through. We're going to contact a few places and use the podcast as sort of our way of saying, hey, would you mind if we came in and kind of looked around a little bit and got a tour of the place and maybe featured you on the podcast? So, see what we can do about that. So it should be fun.
I have to bring up one more thing that we had not planned on talking about, but it is based on like paranormal shows and stuff like that. This past week, maybe in the last 2 weeks, a new documentary came out called Michigan Hell House with Steve Shippy and Cindy.
Right.
Is it Kaza? Right?
Kaza, yeah.
She's great too, as far as it goes with being a psychic and medium and all that kind of stuff.
A psychic?
Yeah.
What's a psychic?
A psychic.
You said psychic.
I know, because it's got a P at the beginning, doesn't it?
Oh, a psychic.
And here's the thing, and I'll just mention this again. I really enjoy Steve and Cindy. And the story is a great story. It's a story that's been going on for several decades. And I just feel like I wanted to let people know about it. It's on Discovery Plus and some other outlets and whatever. You can look it up, Michigan Hell House. But the story is from the 70s, I think, primarily, right?
74, 75. Yeah.
It's about a family in Michigan, kind of in rural Michigan, and some of the shit that goes down and how they're still dealing with some stuff. And just what I liked about it was there's all this police report action. There's all this state police report action. There's all this state fire marshal action because there's fires involved and all sorts of shit that went down.
It's crazy.
And I like the marriage when you can get paranormal activity. And this stuff was followed for many, many months by police and investigators and other paranormal investigators at that time. To have that all come together in one location and to see what this family went through and to see the conclusions that were made by big organizations like the Michigan State Police and the Michigan State Fire Marshal and all that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And the one thing I will just say is I just wish there was less drama at the end, and I wish that we could go, boom, something happened here, but.
So for those who aren't too familiar with Steve Shippy, Steve has been doing sort of movie-length documentaries. There's several of them. You can find them on Amazon Prime, and it usually starts with a haunting on or a haunting at. And originally he had covered this in, I think it was, don't quote me, but I think it was a haunting on Dice Road.
Right.
But he didn't get into it. They didn't get into it the way that this one does. And I was so impressed with it. I thought it was so well done, but you're right. I think the hard part is how do you wrap up a story like that? You can't, after all of that, like, it was so well done. And it was so, like, the two brothers involved in it were so, like, genuine. And you could tell that this just affected their lives. And this was from the 70s. So we're talking 50 years it had affected their lives. But again, how do you wrap it up without being at least somewhat dramatic? And do it justice. But I know there was a little bit more drama probably at the end than there needed to be. But I highly recommend it. I know you do. I highly recommend going and watching it. It's on Discovery Plus right now.
He also, along with Cindy, did the documentary on Ed Gein, which, again, a lot of it was very interesting. But then there was the conclusions that they came to that I could not sit and say, well, I don't necessarily agree with your conclusions.
Yeah, yeah. And especially since we had been there personally after that, and we kind of know what our experiences were with it.
Yeah, but we didn't walk away. Neither one of us walked away with conclusions.
I think we had more questions than we had answers by the end of it.
We had speculation to what we thought may have happened, but we didn't say this is what happened. Whenever somebody tells me in the paranormal field that this is exactly what happened, I kind of tune out.
I know. It's hard. Well, as an example, when we went to the actual land that the house was on. That
she trespassed on, which we'll bring up every damn time we tell this story.
And I trespassed on while you two big babies sat in the car.
Dave and I were ready to drive off if a cop came. I'm just telling you right now.
Well, but I had to say, how often am I going to go to the land where Ed Gein lived, right?
Yeah.
So I'm taking advantage of this. But long story short, I didn't really feel what Cindy felt. But that's not to say that Cindy didn't feel it.
Right.
Everybody feels things differently. I could be in the same room as another psychic or another medium, and we could feel two totally different things. But my problem with it is that you can't ever say for sure. I can say what I feel. I can get validation after the fact on some things, but there's other things that I'll never be able to get validation from. And that's one of the reasons I won't read people, because I don't want that responsibility of saying this, 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 and this, and then having it not be true.
Yeah, we've got another idiot down at the Ed Gein property. Yet she's caught in some of the fencing around there. It looks like she's got her ankle caught on the barbed wire fence there. Can somebody send in a unit to see what she's doing? Somebody says that she's doing some kind of weird dance down on the property. We think she's doing the Tootsie Roll, but we're not sure.
Can you imagine the people, though, that they do catch on there? I mean,
I'm sure.
I only went probably 10, 15 in past the gate. It's like one of those old-fashioned
past
farm
the
gates
do not trespass sign, yeah.
But I wanted to see where the house was and everything, and I think I have a good idea of exactly where the house was. But anyways, and then I saw that building on there that looks like it was an original building from when the house was there.
And it looks like it's still being used with something.
Yeah. Well, I guess apparently that land is being used for hunting now. Somebody owns it and they use it for hunting. So that may be where they're using the hunting, like putting hunting stuff or something. But anyway, so yeah. So highly recommend Michigan Hell House because Steve Shippy, Cindy Kaza, really good team. I like her. She's multifaceted too. She can do a lot of stuff. She does a lot of sketching, which I find fascinating because I can't draw a stick figure, let alone anything else. And she does such an amazing job.
Sandy's sketching when she's doing when she's doing some research, it's just a bunch of stick figures and stuff. You're like, well, what is this? Well, see, now this is blah, blah, blah. And that is supposed to be that.
This stands for this and this stands for that. So, one more thing let's talk about quick before we get on. We got a couple questions to do this week, but I have a new show coming out called Empire Spirits, and you can find it right on Facebook. Just go to Empire Spirits if you search, but you can also do facebook.com/Empire Spirits CNY. If anybody is familiar with it, you'll remember a couple of years ago, I did Ghosts, Pubs, and Grub, and that was around the 2020-2021 season. And it's sort of an entertainment / ghost hunting show with an amazing cast of characters, and Dave and I are in it. And so I guess we fill the radio personality side and the podcast host side. I also fill that. And Bill Vincey, who is the owner and producer of the show. And he has a great show on the internet called Empire Plate. So if you're from New York State, it's so cool because he travels around to all of these different restaurants, cafes in New York State, highlights them. Just sort of like a Guy Fieri kind of thing from the Food Channel. And it's just amazing. He's on like his 9th season, over almost 600 restaurants.
Does he
so
also
far.
frost tip his hair and wear the big bowling shirts and stuff too? Or
No, he's actually like this big Italian guy. And he is hilarious because Bill is not comfortable with ghost hunting at all, which makes it even more entertaining and funny because it's like this running joke we have where we try to scare him or get the spirits to actually touch him or do things to him. So that's why we say it's sort of like entertainment / ghost hunting, and it's so much fun. And Empire Spirits is just going to be off the hook. We've already got 3 restaurants that we're going to investigate. We're going to do probably 5 in the season. And eventually I'm going to start an Instagram page, but right now you can check us out right on Facebook, and we'll probably have merch. We're going to do some fun dinner and a show when each one is released at the restaurants themselves. So you can kind of go to the restaurant, eat dinner, watch the show as it premieres, and kind of look around because you'll see all the evidence and the things and say, I'm sitting right in the middle of where the ghosts are. So really, really cool. I want everybody to go follow it and enjoy some of our fun shenanigans. And we'll be filming through this summer, and then everything will be out in the fall. So really excited about that. And
yeah, we've got a woman walking into the black mist. Yeah, could you go on down to the such and such restaurant and get down there? Apparently she's making a fool of herself.
Well, pretty much. No, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to do another season. It's technically the same owner producer, but it's a whole new show. We've got a few of our people coming back. Bill's son Ryan is in it with us again. Michelle Klosick, who owns the Stife in Utica down on Varick Street, who I absolutely adore. She's back this season. We work so well together. And then Heather Elias, who we all know. Everybody runs in the same circles in Utica. We all know her. She's joining the cast this year. So there's going to be 6 of us. It's going to be a lot of fun. We might have a special guest here and there. And I just can't wait.
We've got some problems down at the restaurant. There's this chick, and she's...
Yeah, so Empire Spirits, it's on Facebook. It should be a lot of fun.
Can you tell me, is the individual in question, is her name Sandy Jean? That's exactly right. It is Sandy Jean. Yep, every week we're out after her ass.
She's always doing something. She's always up to something.
Let's get to these questions, I guess.
All right. So I've got a couple this week. I think it'll be really interesting to get your opinion on these, Todd. Christy said to me a couple weeks ago, having spent 15 years working in group homes for people with developmental and psychological disabilities, I have many experiences. I know that it's been touched on in the past. However, I would like to know more about the malevolent entities that seem to attach to some or to the houses in the group, the group homes, or both. Only one of these houses that I was at had a long past, and it had the least amount of activity. I'm just curious because of what I witnessed as well as what was reported by both staff, residents, and doctors. You want to go first?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Let me give me a minute to think about it.
I absolutely love this question because it's a question that not many people would think to ask. I do think that a lot of times people who have developmental and psychological disabilities tend to be a little more, I guess it comes down to the idea of vulnerability. So they say that, and don't get me wrong, I don't think this happens to every person with developmental or psychological disabilities. I think it just, they say that people who end up being in possession, for example, not that these people are actually in possession, but that are in possession are people who are very vulnerable because they have something going on in their life, like drug abuse, alcoholism, major depression, things like that, that they almost unknowingly are allowing these evil or, dark entities to come in and mess with them. And so I'm wondering if it's along the same lines that someone who has a developmental or psychological disability has that maybe innate vulnerability that might not allow them to put up their defenses as much as someone who doesn't have these disabilities or these challenges might be able to do. So, for example, I remember when I was a kid and I would watch these shows, these movies like The Exorcist or stuff. I would literally say out loud, I do not give you permission. Take me over. I love God. I this, I that, and I would say these things literally out loud. But do people who are in the throes of drug abuse or alcoholism or severe depression or these developmental or psychological challenges, do they have that ability to think that through rationally and put these things at arm's length and say, there's no way that this can happen to me? They probably don't. So I think that's why a lot of times you see things that might be that sort of negativity coming through, because if that is the case, if these things are allowed to come in to more vulnerable people, that may very well be why, because their walls, they're not able to put those walls up like someone like you or I would be able to do. And I think that may be part of what it is. I don't know that it's necessarily the buildings in that. We know that there's all different types of layers to things. I'm working on sort of a mini case right now where, I feel like there's layers. I feel like the person is being affected because of the person themselves. There's a building involved, and then there's the land involved. So I think that sometimes it's not necessarily the land or the building. And in this case, like Christy said, only one of the houses has been there for a long time. And that one actually has the least amount of activity. In this case, I think it might be a case of where it's the person themselves and their vulnerability. And I think vulnerability is the best word to use in this case, because if you're vulnerable to something, it can affect you even more. You know what I mean? So that's just sort of my thought on why this may be. I don't know that it's, without knowing specifics, you can't say it's malevolent, it's dark, it's evil. It could just be the idea that there is some energy there that's maybe a more negative feeling, and they're just reacting to it more because of their vulnerability.
I would tend to agree with what you've said. One of the things that has always been in the back of my mind and is, excuse me, a fear of mine is people who have issues with drugs and other things like that, who find themselves in abusive situations, etc. Mm-hmm. You're always attacked at the weakest link,
right,
in your life. Whatever you're weakest at, that is your most vulnerable thing. And when it comes to addictions and things like that, I feel like they feed one another.
Yeah.
The addiction lowers your strength and lowers your ability to be whole. And so that does, I think, invite certain things into the possible realm of your life.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, with people with disabilities, it's not necessarily the disability themselves itself, right. But I think that, again, when you're a child, you're vulnerable, right? And that's when a lot of people have their first experiences. When you are vulnerable, that is typically when you have paranormal experiences. And as you get older, you gain confidence, you gain knowledge, whether that knowledge is true or not. You're told that these things aren't real, so you block that stuff out. In our lives, there's stuff going on in this world every day that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. There are areas of this world we don't hear news about at all. Okay. We know there's a war going on in the Ukraine. We know there was a Chinese spy balloon. We know that, all these things happen, but there's millions of stories every day that we don't know about. And they can't affect us if we don't know about them or don't believe that they're true. Okay. Right. And so when you get to the point where your only belief system is what you've been told and you're not open to other possibilities and other events in the world, those experiences don't happen to you.
Right.
We talk a lot. We've talked a bit about this, and I've talked about it on other podcasts too. But like when we do investigations in America, we typically get, she was in the period dress with the hair up and he was wearing a top hat, Mm-hmm. We never get the story of the Native American who was there. We never get that story. It's just because most of us have very little knowledge of that.
Right.
It's hard for us to experience that energy today. So I think that all kind of ties into your answer. And that is when you're vulnerable to certain things and you allow yourself to kind of be open to new ideas, to things that we don't think of on a typical basis as being real or believable. When you're in that state, that's when things can happen. And that can be a good thing because if you want, if you want to investigate and you want to have experiences, you have to be a little vulnerable. You have to let your guard down a little bit and you have to go, I'm going to be skeptical here. I'm going to be a skeptic, but I'm going to think about what I just saw. I'm going to consider what I just heard and not just blow it off.
Yeah. It makes me think too about all of these places, these dark places that were asylums or, places. What's the one down by the city that was so famous in the 70s? Geraldo Rivera did the expose on it where it was children and adults with developmental and psychological disabilities, and they were being treated just horrifically. And there's such a dark energy there that they've had some investigations in these places, and there's just nothing but negative energy. And, my advice to somebody who works in a situation like that or works in a group home is to make sure that you're protecting yourself. When you're on an airplane and they go through the thing that everybody ignores and they talk about, the oxygen dropping down out of the ceiling and they say, take care of yourself first so you can help others. It's really important, I think, to remember that if you work in a situation like that, there is going to be just an easier opportunity for negative feelings, for sadness, and for depression and things like that when you work in those situations. And so you really should think to protect yourself first, because if you're protecting yourself and you're keeping positive and you're keeping those good feelings for yourself, it does radiate. And I think it does help the residents as well, because you're projecting your positivity and your confidence and your good feelings and your strength to them when you deal with them on a daily basis. And I think it's so important that you protect yourself and that you take good care of yourself when you're in those situations, because I do think it projects onto the residents. And, I know that you start to really care about them and you don't want things to happen to them, but you also don't want things to happen to yourself or to each other. And so I think all in all, my biggest piece of advice is just protect yourself and just be positive and just think good things and make sure that there's good energy in the space that you're in so that it projects onto the residents and the people that really need it the most,
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was just an amazing question because I don't think anybody's ever asked anything even close to that. And I thought it was just really fascinating. So thank you, Christy, for that question. I hope we kind of gave you some.
I was just going to say, I hope I answered it correctly and I hope I understood the question, but it's like it all somehow ties together like everything else in life.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't necessarily always mean it's the land or the house or the building. it sometimes is just the people and the vulnerability of the people there.
Well, and if there's a lot of sadness and pain and all that, I mean, that's going to leave energy behind.
And sadness and pain and stress and chaos are just beacons for this stuff. It's a catalyst. So that's why I say, make sure it's an environment of peace and love and helpfulness and happiness. That's the most important thing. I've worked with, when I was actually in radio, I worked with a group every year. We'd help them with a dance. A band would come and play, and we'd make appearances. And these were my people. These were people with developmental and psychological disabilities. And I love them to this day. I haven't seen them in a few years because of COVID, but I just love them. And this place, this day center that they were at, that I worked with, these people who worked there were the kindest, sweetest people in the world. And they just emanated love and caring for the people who came each day. And over the years, I got to know them and love them as well. And it was just such this wonderful time. And I really think it makes a difference, paranormal or not. It makes such a difference in so many people's lives when you're positive and uplifting and you really care. So just such a great question. Okay, so now Kim Newcomb says, I have one for you. Do you think that after someone passes, their spirit could come back and play practical jokes on you? The reason for my question is my grandmother believed this happened to her right after her best friend died, and later found out that it happened to the family as well. My grandmother was down in the basement sewing when she witnessed plastic glasses flying off the bar shelf one by one.
Absolutely. There's my answer, period.
Without a doubt. I think they come back and visit you. I really think I don't think it happens all the time. I think it's sort of, it can be a case like your mom, who just came when the situation was right, and she felt that she needed to come to you, and she did. Boy, did she ever. And, but I do think that when you have a connection, the idea that I've read is that basically when you pass, 1/3 of your consciousness remains. The rest goes off and can reincarnate or do whatever happens to you after that. But 1/3 of your consciousness remains. And so you always have a tie with the person that you've lost. If you're the living person, you always have that tie with them. And I think this is for animals too. I was getting Reiki once about 6 months after I lost my Jack in 2020. And I was getting Reiki by a group of women who were mediums and Reiki masters and sort of training together because they were going to open a store. And 3 of them said that they saw a little black dog running around the table while I was getting my Reiki, in a protection mode. And that would have been my Jack. So I do believe that they have the ability to come back. I had the experience with my dear friend Tremaine, who I lost almost a year ago. I do think they come back. And I do think that, I don't know if it's necessarily practical jokes. I think that and we've talked about this before, it's just whatever they can do to make you aware of their presence. Some of them can, whistle or move something, or they can bang on the door or the wall, or whatever they are able to do, they're doing that to make their presence known to you, so you'll acknowledge that they're there. And that's what I feel like happens. I think they can visit you if they want.
I think too, if their personality was they were practical jokers, then absolutely they're going to do that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in something that I've heard, and actually Sue from Apps mentioned this after my father had passed away. She said, in about 3 months, you're probably going to get a visit. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in the 3-month theory about, seriously, why?
I'm laughing because I lost Tremaine in April not knowing, but it was just around the middle of July when I had all of this stuff going on with him. So
Right.
I think you're onto something. I really do.
Well, she said that to me, and I never had a chance to reach out and say, and this would be my question. If anybody has an answer to this question, they can respond and we can talk about it on an episode too. But what is the 3-month thing? Why is it 3 months? Or what's the theory on 3 months? What's that meaning?
That's a great question.
When my mom passed away, we had some stuff happen prior to her passing and just after her passing. And I think some of that was fueled by our energy and our excitement and our, I think some of it was from us, but I think, I didn't have another experience with my mom till years later at the lighthouse.
Right.
So I wonder what the 3-month thing is. And, I hope my dad does come visit.
Yeah.
I really do.
Think it's interesting because I didn't know about that, but it was the end of April he passed. Of course, I didn't know until July, but you think May, June, July, that pretty much was 3 months later.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. Maybe it doesn't happen all the time that way, but maybe it's just that they need that kind of energy, that kind of ability. Maybe I don't know. That's a great question.
Maybe that is the purgatory or something, that waiting period of 3 months when you finally are released from your human body. Yeah. And that allows you to gain the energy that you need to do all the other stuff. I don't know, but I'd be interested in knowing that.
I don't know. I know. Maybe we should ask Sue and see what Sue says.
Well, she'll listen to this at some point and she can get back to us.
And, but I would say this too. I would say also, if you lose a loved one, be open to the idea that they will come to you, because sometimes it'll be something that you least expect and you weren't thinking about. And if you're open to the idea that they'll come back, you may actually recognize it a little bit faster, a little bit easier than you would if you were just shut down and lost in your grief.
I think when it comes to the lighthouse, I almost set the intention ahead of time by saying, I think my mom's going to come through.
Yeah. Didn't you say it in the car?
No, I did. And I had been thinking about it the entire planning of the trip. Like, I just had a feeling that if my mom was ever going to come through and really come through to me, it was going to be there. Yeah. And then it happened. So I think really that, again, as you say, setting intention for it as well.
If you had set an intention to me, even 3 years ago, I would have thought you were crazy. I wouldn't even understood what that means. But as soon as I set an intention for something, it's when all the games begin for me. And I think it's really important to do that. And I think it's important to talk to your loved ones that you've lost and ask them to come forward if they're able to, if you want to communicate with them. I think that, again, if you look deeply enough and you're open enough to the idea that they'll come back to visit you, they will. I had a candle knock over in this period when I found out about Trey, that there was no reason for this candle to knock over. And at the time, I don't think I was open enough to it to understand or recognize what it was. I didn't until it was after the fact of actually communicating with him. But you just don't know. And if you're open to it, the possibilities are endless, I believe. So.
All right. Another good round of questions. I think we've got some news we want you to stick around for. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to let you know how we can give back to you, possibly. You got to do a little something for it, but you could be getting something cool from us. But I think right now we should throw in the spiel.
You can find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts, including YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. You can also join our group, Stay Weirdos, friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for more fun. Stay Weirdos is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and random inappropriate memes without judgment. Sandy and Todd also have a podcast called the Empathecary Podcast. It's for empaths, by empaths. And if you know an empath, you might want to listen too. Find and like the page on Facebook. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can also help with that too. Mindgarden Media is their latest project where the dynamic duo can guide you every step of the way in your podcasting journey. Editing, producing and consulting is what they do. Like Mindgarden Media on Facebook or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for staying weird.
All right, there's the spiel. And now the announcement.
I think the woman who's always like trespassing and doing weird shit is going to make an announcement for the entire crew. Everybody listen in.
All right, I got to get that thing away from you. Let's cut off your hands. All right. So we decided I'm always trying to be crafty and thinking about things to do. And I thought, we have had so much fun this season, and
she's knitted some gloves.
I've knitted gloves
that she'd like
for
to
the
give away.
Right, the entire listenership now has a whole bunch of gloves.
The problem is that they don't all have 5 fingers. Some have 4, some have 8 because she lost count. So
yeah, some are short, some go all the way to your elbow. And
you might get one that's short on one hand, the other one's really long because she.
It all depends on how much sleep I got the night before
and how much yarn she used.
So I decided to make a few little things. And what we're going to give away is smudging kits, saging kits.
Nice.
For your home. And they're just little mini kits. And each kit will have a sage bundle, a piece of Palo Santo, a selenite stick, some small tumbled crystals, like, mini crystals, and an essential oil and a feather. And they'll also come with instructions on how to smudge or sage your space.
Love it.
And I think a lot of people are interested in doing it, but don't really understand how or know what to get or how to do it. So I thought, let me put together some little kits for everybody. So we have 4 kits that we're going to give away. And I am, as if you haven't picked up on that already, I have a lot of immense respect for the Native American culture. And smudging actually originated, as we know it today, originated in the Native American culture. And so it's very important to me. I smudge my space, my studio a lot. And I take it very seriously. So I thought it would be neat if anybody was interested that we'd give away 4 different smudging kits for everybody to get started, sort of a starter kit. And then when you feel the difference, and you will, you can get your own stuff. So how are we going to do it, Todd?
Well, I think what we need to do is I'd love to have people share their stories with us. Something that happened when it was an aha moment for you, something that maybe you're still questioning today, something that you feel very certain of today because it happened to you, whatever that might be. That's what I'd love to have you tell the story of. Allow us to share that story and then go from there.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because we've all had experiences, regardless of whether we've told anybody about them before or not, or we were just kind of like, did I really hear what I think I heard?
Right.
Did this really happen to me? Or am I imagining this? We've all had experiences. And the reason that everybody listens to the show is because they're interested and they have had experiences, or they're interested in having an experience.
Right.
They'd like to do something like, paranormal investigation or something like that. So you have a story. Make sure that you send it to us. A lot of people choose to message me directly on Facebook. I'm under Sandy Jean. You can just click on my name. I'm always posting in our group, our Stay Weirdos group, or you can message us in that group. Message me directly. You can message the Sandy and Toddcast page on Facebook. Just message us, give us your story, and let us know you're interested in taking a chance to get one of these smudging kits. And we'd love to share your story, maybe talk a little bit about it afterwards. And you may be one of the 4 lucky people who will get one. We'll ship it to you free of charge. And then you can kind of start on your journey of smudging.
Love it.
There we go.
All right.
So that starts today. Let's get going and let's send in. And you can, of course, always email us as well. The Sandy and Toddcast at gmail.com. And we'll start taking in all of the little entries and stories.
Sounds good. I love it.
All right.
Let's keep the conversations going. Reach out with us. Any more questions, all that kind of stuff. We've got at least 2 more episodes of this season, so we'd love to fill it with questions and all that kind of stuff. And we'll probably have some season break little extras in there too. We'll do something extra.
Of course.
So
you bet.
At any rate, till the next podcast, till the next Sandy and Toddcast.
I think she's going to stop the broadcast now so we can all take a fucking break.
She is Sandy. I am Todd. Bye.
Bye.